the saying, don't you? Find a new hill. Be a king. All of you are in milk. People never learn. Do they? Carjo!
Yes? What do you need?
Nothing.
Some advice, friend. That armor won't offer much protection in a real fight.
Milk drinker. This is Annick. She is a Breton from High Rock who was born in Crosswich, a centrally located town that was an important junction of trade and cultural exchange. Annick grew up exposed to many different people and cultures as caravans passed through, and from a young age knew Crosswich in and out, off doing her own thing. Her parents were merchants who profited from the trading opportunities there, but were always looking to better their status and material circumstances. They were eager for Annick to ascend the ranks in High Rock and achieve a high title in order to elevate their own position in society. When two Bretons approached their stall in the market, claiming they were emissaries of a prestigious knightly order looking for children of promise for their apprenticeship program, her parents seized this opportunity and signed her up on the spot. Little did they know they had been tricked, and had actually given her to members of a cult devoted to Molag Bal, and sequestered in an abandoned ruin deep in the rock of Rivenspire. The hybrid group of Daedra-worshipping High Elves, Dureni descendants, and Bretons was rumored to be left over from the Battle of Glenumbra Moors, who had kept alive delusions of Ayleid grandeur and domination, and aspired to rebuild the Doomcrag and the city of Oroki. The cult used children as slaves and enforced a brutally abusive hierarchy, believing this would gain Molag Bal's favor, who would then restore to them the lightless remnant, or the Abagandra. Since the day she was taken captive, Annick vowed to herself that she would one day escape. She developed extremely high skill in sneaking and pickpocketing, adding provisions to her scant diet and a few rare trinkets that reminded her of the outside world. She convinced two other girls to join her, and they agreed to follow her plan exactly. When the day arrived, the three girls pulled off a flawless escape, determined not to stop until they had left High Rock behind. They traveled across Hrothgar and made the treacherous journey on the snow-ridden mountain pass through the Druidoc Mountains, finally crossing over into Skyrim. Utterly depleted and overcome with relief, they stopped in the first shelter they came across, a cave, though Annick was uneasy in this all-too-familiar suffocating cavern of rock. After pacing the cave entrance and hearing strange creature sounds she couldn't place, Annick was overwhelmed by panic and told the other two they had to leave immediately and continue on to ask for refuge at the orc stronghold nearby. Her two friends were too exhausted to move on, as well as apprehensive of approaching the orcs, and they refused. After exploding into an argument, Annick stated she was leaving, and doggedly pressed on alone through the rocky forests of northwestern Skyrim, propelled by furious sadness, all the way to Morkisgur. Annick begins her story shouting up to the guards from outside the gates, making a case for them to take her in. Although she isn't bloodkin, she convinces them she is, claiming that word is being sent from Orsinium and she simply arrived ahead of the message. She promises to work in their mine, and her case is helped when she denounces all of High Rock, except for the orcs, genuinely expressing her deepest disgust for the entire province. They agree to take her in, and for a few days Annick recovers and finds peace in the stronghold. But when the Morkisgur chieftain lets her know it is time she start helping with mining and contributing to the stronghold, she bristles, putting off her duties and then flat out refusing. From that point, things fall apart quickly for Annick and the orcs in Morkisgur. She begins drinking heavily and venturing out at all hours, stealing whatever she comes across and picking fights whenever she feels like it. She is unable to adapt to life in accordance with the Code of Malakath, declaring it to be just more brainwashing for another cult. The orcs, already skeptical of her bloodkin claims, promptly ask her to leave. She makes a scene and pressures Borgak the Steelheart to join her, and Borgak reluctantly agrees. They spend the first days outside the stronghold, roaming according to Annick's reckless whims, scaling perilous terrain and taking on enemies of unimaginable power. After tearing across Skyrim haphazardly, they eventually land in Riften. At her wit's end, Borgak declares that she cannot tolerate Annick's destructive behavior any longer. She's worried about Annick and says if she doesn't get help, she'll leave. Sloshed and unmoved by Borgak's concern for her, Annick derisively dismisses her, descending into yet another bender. Annick is willfully chaotic and extremely impulsive. She will pick up whatever weapons she comes across, often selling or even just dropping them in random places when she's sick of carrying them. She'll learn a couple spells, then get sick of them too. She favors light armor, disliking the feeling of being weighed down, but often ends up in a hodgepodge of whatever armor or clothing she feels like wearing that day. She tends to sneak around and pickpocket for fun, which often gets her and whoever accompanies her into serious trouble. She's adept at trading and takes particular delight in intimidating local merchants with the Volsung mask she picked up after leaving the stronghold. She's very promiscuous and can be counted on to have flings with whoever crosses her path. She drinks like an Argonian in the desert and obsessively hoards food. Sometime later, as she wanders Skyrim alone, she happens to cross paths with the Khajiit caravan and meets Karjo, who is traveling with the traders as a guard. After she finds his moon amulet, they become friends, getting into trouble and pulling off heists in the various holds. On a whim, the pair decide to join the Thieves' Guild and rise quickly in the ranks, despite thinking the guild is a total joke, stealing from them when they can, while making fun of how seriously the guild members take themselves. For a brief period of time, Annick forms a small band of would-be pirates, recruiting loners and misfits to join up with her and Karjo and raid the ships along the coast of Skyrim. Yet this enterprise too quickly devolves. Despite being a natural and dauntless leader, Annick impulsively decides one day to disband the group, finding it unbearable to be part of anything that is remotely confining. Despite Annick's willingness to cut and run, Karjo turns out to be the one constant in her life. Never before has she met someone like Karjo, who accepts her completely as she is. Annick's life has been defined by a need for freedom, which she has tenuously maintained by avoiding any discipline that could threaten to box her in. And though this is a recipe for adventure, Annick's driven, self-destructive tendencies keep her constantly running from herself, oscillating between the lowest lows and the highest highs, finding relief in anything that is far from home.
Not only that, but these Nords have no love for us. They look upon us and see only thieves and smugglers.
Beware, beware, the Dragonborn comes.